Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Embrace the Opposite. I'm your host, Andrew. Great to be back with you guys. So today we're going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to talk about something very personal. I'm going to be the most transparent that I've ever been on the channel, the most open that I've ever been on the channel, and I'm going to tell you guys a story. So it's story time. A story about basically where I really messed up in my marriage. To the point where almost the whole thing just imploded. So stay tuned. We're going to get into story time here today, guys. So before I get into the video today, guys, and the story time video today, a couple things I want to just get out in the open. One is I discussed this with my wife. This is going to be a very personal story, so she was okay with that. I want to make sure that's out there. Two is obviously I'm just going to be going through the story, not going to name any names or anything like that. And then lastly, I hope that by sharing a little bit more of a personal issue in my own life and my own marriage, that it can help somebody else out there. So please be open to guys to commenting below. Let me know if you've had similar issues like the one I'm going to share today, and hopefully we can get a nice discussion going about what you guys do and how you handle that. If anybody knows anything about me, it's that I love movies. I've echoed that many times on this channel. I love narrative and story. And in most times, story is broken up into three sections. So there's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So Act 1 is basically my wife and I are married about 6 to 8 months. And what had happened was, prior to my relationship, is I had remained in contact with a lot of my ex-girlfriends, my ex-relationships. It was something that when I was single, I didn't really feel the need to change that. There was never any, that being a part of my personality and the way that I handle things, there was never really any threat to that or anything that threatened. But obviously when my wife and I got married, some of those things kind of came to a head, and there was basically a grouping of incidents where an ex-girlfriend would reach out, or there'd be a phone conversation of some sort, and I was not handling it the right way. So in a lot of those instances, I appreciated the connection, and reason being is my personality is I like to be liked. I don't like to not be liked. So if something has happened, even with some of those past relationships, if the breakup was really bad, I was always about finding a way to reconnect, because to me, that let me know that this person didn't hate me, even though we weren't together anymore. An ex-girlfriend who was married and had children and secure and everything, asked, or it had come up that that we should go on a double date to see a movie. And so what I had done is, whenever I had talked about ex-girlfriends to my wife, I downplayed it. I had made it seem like these were just, relationships. I had a couple serious relationships before I got married. So obviously those were like, hey, those were serious relationships, but everything else was kind of like just, 3 months, 6 months, nothing crazy. And I really downplayed everything, because in my mind, for whatever reason, I didn't want my wife to feel like those relationships were coming in and doing anything to our current relationship. So I really downplayed everything. And these were basically lies. I was basically being dishonest with my wife, to where I was sharing that these past relationships really weren't anything to be worried about. And they weren't anything to be worried about, but I wasn't honest about the confines of those relationships. So here I am encouraging a double date with a past girlfriend. The issue was with this particular person is she was now a friend, so I just told my wife it's a friend. Well, I didn't reveal the other bits of information, that this was a past girlfriend. So when I presented that to my wife, she was very hurt, she was very upset. And so I ended up having to cancel the whole thing. It should have taught me that this whole ex-girlfriend thing is something I need to get a better handle on in my relationship, but I didn't learn. Act 2 is we ended up going to marriage counseling. So this is probably 2 years into our marriage, maybe a year, almost 2 years, maybe a year and a half into our marriage. And the idea of the ex-girlfriends still came into play. Now it's important to share, my wife and I have different personalities. I'm more extrovert and she's more introvert. So I'm outgoing and I like to talk to people and I like to maintain relationships, where my wife is like, hey, I'm cool as is. We go to the marriage counseling and some of these things start to get uncovered. So, Andrew, you have a different personality. Laura, you have a different personality. But the focus is, how do we move past this idea of Andrew wanting to connect or having connected with his ex-girlfriends? What came to a head was basically that for my wife to feel comfortable, that I needed to outline a lot of the things that I had done in my past, all of the things I had done in my past. And my first thought, and basically this is writing a detailed list of everything from my past. My first reaction was that I didn't want to do this, and I think it was a little bit of my ego being involved. I didn't feel that at the time that would help her. I felt like she would see all these things, think about me with all these women, and that would actually put her in a worse position concerning my exes. At the same time, though, that shouldn't have been my initial thought. I should have thought about, why she needs this, how can this help her, what's happening in our world for her to feel like this is more security, this is a more secure move for her. Basically, it was my inability to be honest about my past that drove us here. So my inability to share accurate information was what my wife had a concern about. And so in the midst of these sessions, and we only did about 2 or 3 counseling sessions, but they were extremely helpful. And so I end up pulling this list together, giving it to my wife, talking about it, and really the hope was that this would, push us to have more openness, more transparency. But another reason that my wife just generally had concerns was because I had been unfaithful in other relationships in my past. And some of these women that I was attempting to maintain relationships with were women that I cheated with while I was in other relationships. Also, as a result of this, we decided to disconnect from all social media. So this was me going into Facebook and Instagram primarily and defriending all of my ex-relationships. This was hard for me again, and you might say, well, why is this hard? It was hard for me because I didn't feel like they had done anything wrong. I felt secure in my current relationship. But the fact of the matter was that no matter how outlandish my wife's concerns were or what she needed to help move past this, I should have put myself in a position and I should have put her priorities and the priorities of our marriage at the forefront of everything, and I failed to do that. So my cousin told me something a couple months back. He said, nothing should come in between Christ and his church. Now, no matter what religion you follow, you can get behind that idea of 2 energies or 2 beings or 2 people coming together and forming one entity, uniting and being stronger as one. What I think some of us miss and what I think is important is when you connect with someone and when you desire to be with someone, it's important that other things don't get in the way. And you have to prioritize that. Act 3, for those of you that don't know, my wife and I are originally from Pittsburgh. We ended up moving out to California, which is currently where we are. So this was right when we moved out. Well, maybe 6 months after we moved out. And it's our first Christmas. So, joyous time. We have our little son. And it's Christmas Eve. I go to the mail to check the mail because we were getting some presents from family members. And I come back and my wife basically is upset. She's standoffish. I'm like, what's going on? And she puts my phone on the table. And it basically shows that on Instagram, it shows that I had been searching for my ex-girlfriend's accounts, and I had been liking their page and whatnot. So basically what had happened was I disconnected from all the social media. But with Instagram, it's a little bit different. So with Instagram, you can unfollow someone and they can still be following you. And the only way you can completely disconnect is if you block them. And I didn't feel blocking was necessary. So what would happen was there would be occasions where an ex would like one of my photos and that would prompt me to maybe go look for them and to see how they were doing. I never reached out after that point. After the disconnection from social media, I never reached out, but I would curiously go onto their page every once in a while, and that would cause the search field to be populated. And this was, it's these weird areas because this is something that we didn't say specifically shouldn't be done, but yet I knew that my wife would not appreciate that, and I knew that that was disrespectful to my relationship. These are the things that we do sometimes where we feel like nobody's watching, we feel like it's not hurting anybody, we feel like that it's completely fine, and sometimes when it's exposed, we don't know what to do. So she did that to me. She laid the phone out on the table, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, when something like that happens, I go into damage control mode. So my mind began to rush and think about things that I can say that minimized what we were both seeing. So I can't remember what I came up with, but I came up with something, that's from a while ago, and maybe on the page it said something like recent searches, so that wouldn't stand and hold. And I was very flustered and I was very embarrassed. And I had a lot of anxiety in that moment. And it caused us to have just a terrible holiday. And it was really unfortunate. What's even more unfortunate is that this was the third occurrence of issues with ex-girlfriends and ex-relationships, past relationships. And so I feel like I had to get knocked on the head 3 different times before I kind of woke up. At this point now, we're in a much better position with that. I'm rebuilding trust. When you violate trust with your partner, it's like a building that crumbles, and it's not completely wiped away, but you're taking blocks off that building, and the more you break that trust, the more blocks come off. And the hard part is putting those blocks on, but now they're larger, they're heavier, they maybe are weaker. And so you put one on and it crumbles. And then you got to go back over and get another one and put it up there and be very delicate with it. And we have to do these things in our relationships. When trust is broken, you really have to commit and submit to finding a way to build that trust back up with the other person. We have developed some strategies to do that. If you guys are struggling with that, you got to find a way to do that yourself. Each position is different based on where the trust was broken and the two individuals involved in building that back up. So, proactively talking to my wife about it, assuring her that I understand now why she felt the way she did, and here's what I'd like to do to build that back up. And it's not just giving flowers, and it's not just doing a one-time act. This is a new implant into your relationship that needs to be involved for the duration. And what I want to share with you guys is, even though I was a bonehead and I was stubborn and I felt as though my desire to be liked and stay in contact with people was something greater than my own relationship. Even though I made that mistake, there's still opportunity to drive to success. I'm not the best spouse who ever lived, but that's what I'm pushing for. And it took me some time to realize that I want to be swell. I may not embrace the opposite in every single situation, but that's what I'm pushing for. We gotta make sure that we're committing. If you want to be swell, you gotta make sure that you're committing to fixing your mistakes, to finding pathways to success. Not perfection, but success. And that's different for everybody. I want to motivate you guys. If you have a situation like I did, one, comment below, let me know about it. But two, don't give up. There's always an opportunity, and sometimes you got to humble yourself. You got to be really, really humble. In those situations, I was so embarrassed. I was so caught off guard. I had anxiety. And after I was able to bring everything into perspective, I humbled myself to my wife. I apologized to my wife. I recommitted to my wife to make her and our marriage a priority. And I think that's what we all have to do. I'm sharing this because I have work to do. I'm sharing this because we all have work to do. I'm sharing this so that you guys can potentially see where you need to improve. This is a reoccurring thing in a lot of relationships, past relationships or exes. How do you handle those? And it can be different for everybody. But I know that when I first recognized that my wife had this particular issue and was not cool about that, and I was still trying to find ways to make that a part of my life because of maybe what I felt comfortable with, or what made me feel good about myself, well then it puts your ego over your spouse, over your partner, and you guys should really be driving to find the common ground so that your egos can go forward together. So guys, that's what I wanted to share today. I hope it was helpful. A little bit of a story time episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you feel this video has helped you. Share it if you feel someone else could benefit from it. Storytime will be back next month. We're going to try to do them one a month. And I hope you guys find that helpful. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.